So welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with marketplace founders and leaders from some today's top marketplaces. So this is episode 37, and I'm super excited to welcome on Kyle Kretschman, who is the head of marketplace economics at Spotify. So most of you are probably familiar with Spotify, but if not, it's a platform for music and audio discovery that IPO'd in 2018. So in today's chat, we're going to dive into the dynamics of it as a marketplace business, discuss some of the creator tools and services that it's building, and much more. So, wow, first off, Kyle, this is a real treat to have you join us here today. So welcome to the group chat. I also think it's the first time that we've had an economist join us. So welcome. We have a lot to chat about here today on the group chat. Maybe before we jump into things, though, if you could start off by sharing a little bit more on your background and what led you to join the Spotify team, that'd be great.
Sure, very happy to share and really appreciate the invite, as I said earlier. Excited to talk to everybody here and hopefully to get some good ideas myself. So a little bit of background about me is I got my PhD in economics from the University of Texas in Austin, and that was in 2011. And I'll give you a quick background before that I always knew that I wanted to be an economist in tech, but economists in tech were a very, very, very small segment of the job function. But some of the keys for that was I actually started out as a computer science major in undergrad, switched to economics in grad school. I probably had one of the worst presentations to Capital Factory in Austin that they've ever seen. That was led with me, me and a potential co-founder that included, well, how are you guys going to monetize this business? And we gave a correct collective shrug, but that was planting the seeds for wanting to be like a tech economist and more entrepreneurial mindset than within academia. So after I left Austin, I had a job that I didn't really like, so we're going to gloss over that pretty quickly, but it was basically doing nonprofit research. And then I had the opportunity to move into tech, and the choices was between Google and Amazon. And so Amazon was basically the leader in tech economists. I'm pretty sure people are familiar with Amazon. You know, they ship things, they host some things, you know, they have a pretty big market cap. Um, but they hired a chief economist who was different than Google's chief economist. Google's chief economist is Hal Varian and very theoretical and less applied, versus Amazon, led by the Jeffs, hired a chief economist named Pat Bayari, and he was very, very applied focused. So really think of the opportunity at Amazon is to be a data scientist, but as an economist means that you're using your economics training every single day. And you're applying that through data manipulation, machine learning models, prediction, causal inference. And so I jumped at it. And so I was one of the first 13 economists at Amazon. And when I left there after about 7 years, I led a 20-person team that was basically the econometric arm for the CFO of the consumer business. So I had a 20-person team that included an internal software product, economic research, and specifics on financial reporting on external demand trends and things that Amazon couldn't control, but we should take into account for strategy. I have on that, or should I jump into the decision to move to Spotify, because it was a pretty big decision and inflection point in my career life about 7 months ago.
Awesome.
Keep going.
Yeah. No, that's a great. Could you maybe, I guess, for a little bit of context, could you maybe just describe like what does a economist do kind of internally at Amazon, and then how that led you to join the Spotify team?
Yeah, and so I'll generalize it to tech, because there's a growing need to understand why why our machine learning models are making the predictions they are. Why is the business happening? So specifically, like at Amazon, I led a team that would do financial attribution of major events. So you can think of good and bad things like a Prime Day or a hurricane. And we built econometric / machine learning models that would do the financial attribution of those next day. So what a tech economist does is take their econometric training on incentives combined with estimatable models that can give you business impacts and KPIs, and apply those directly to impact the business. So I say it's hybrid in between being a machine learning scientist and somebody who's solely focused on a prediction problem, and being a business analyst and being a business leader that is going to have to answer the question why. And if you answer the question why, then you develop the strategy to fix, improve, or change that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing
And
more on that. And
yeah,
then so then what led you to be interested in joining the Spotify team?
Yeah, so like any of these decisions, probably three things: personal, professional, and then subject matter. I can candidly say I didn't go home from Amazon reading about e-commerce trends. It was an amazing place to be an economist, but the subject matter wasn't exactly what I wanted to be focusing my whole career on. So Spotify obviously does that. Huge music fan, and so I was initially intrigued, but I'll kind of say I had a position at Amazon that I thought might be like a career position. I was a trusted C-level support function, and but what really gave me the opportunity was I talked about what tech economists can do. Spotify didn't have that. So the previous economist, chief economist who left, was more focused on the marketing aspect, or that you would understand from an industry economist. And so they said, come build what you build at Amazon here at Spotify. We want to have this integration of economists within tech, within the machine learning, and again, be that hybrid researcher, business, impactful leader, and come do that at Spotify. So that was two check marks. And then lastly, personal. I have an 18-month-old now, and we were in Seattle. And my wife actually still works at Amazon, but works remotely now. All our families here on the East Coast, so the chance to come to live in Brooklyn and get our little guy closer to extended family, you know, subject matter, professional opportunity plus personal. We said, yeah, let's do it, and I couldn't be happier. Spotify just is a growing company that provides an amazing place to be this hybrid researcher. And I'll say I could talk about some challenges of I onboarded actually. Well, my on-site interview was actually canceled because of COVID. It was supposed to be mid-March. So I've onboarded and led and grown a remote team over these past 9 months, all in there. So I could happy to talk about more of those things also.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely jump into it, but I can definitely first off, see why you joined the team for sure.
Yeah.
So if someone was to, from the outside kind of ask you, what do you do internally at Spotify? How would you describe that?
Sure. So I lead the marketplace economics team that is a direct function that's understanding how the marketplace operates. So you can think of Spotify as a two-sided marketplace. One side is the customers who are paying the subscriptions. We call them listeners. The other side is the supply side, which is the content creators. And so specifically, my job is to understand and come up with business proposals and new policies on how we can come up with a better supply chain for music. So we know that music is going to start from a variety of different places, from millions and massive amounts of creators. There's going to be intermediaries within it. My job is to come and evaluate and determine and build statistical models that would test what would happen if we did different pricing proposals, if we had different inventory proposals. And so that's like the nutshell part of my job. Specifically, it means understanding industry trends on the marketplace side. So how are labels evolving? How are the different music aggregators evolving? What our creator needs are looking like? And then again, my job is to put those pieces together into statistical models so that when we launch a new feature or product, I can causally say this had this impact on this KPI.
Got it. Got it. That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's quite the role and opportunity.
Yeah.
So Spotify is quite a large org, and you guys obviously are a public company. So your day to day, who do you interface with as far as like the org structure?
So my direct team is a mix between data scientists and economists, and then the larger team is a mix of business analysts, finance analysts, and business leaders to support that. So it's an organization that does not own product itself. So we provide the business analysis to the product teams in marketplace.
Got it. Got it.
And
Cool.
so my day to day would be a mix between PhD researchers, some of the C-level executives, our direct VP of the marketplace, um, down, and then also includes junior analysts and coaching on that. So it's for me, I love that because it's a wide spectrum of being what I consider is super valuable, which is a data translator. And so, I mean, I came out of a meeting earlier today that was, talking about some really nuanced optimization that we were potentially considering, and then also a C-level meeting on some PR comms issues that we're considering coming out. So I feel really lucky to be kind of like at that nexus as I'm talking about to be able to bridge the gap between the business, research, and economics.
That is definitely quite the unique position.
Yeah.
So most people, I think, don't think about Spotify as a marketplace. Consumers that are just use it for discovering
Hmm.
new music and artists. So if we were to kind of, since we are all marketplace founders here in the group, if we were to kind of break it down as a marketplace, how would you kind of break it down as the different pillars of the marketplace?
Sure. So the different, as we've talked about, two-sided marketplace. There's also then you can consider advertisers as a potential customer and a potential customer and supplier for Spotify also. So, three main stakeholders: creators, advertisers, and customers that we call listeners. Specifically within Spotify's marketplace, it's building tools for the artists and creators. So S4X is very, very popular within the artist community now. What that is an analytics tool that any artist who uploads music to Spotify can go and understand their performance. And so it's not then just then it's also then being a tool that can integrate how they collaborate with their team, so managers can have access to it. So there's an analytics tool that is one of the key marketplace tools. Then there's also promotion tools. One that's very popular is Marquee, and so that's a promotion tool where an artist who releases a new album or a new single can pay to have advertising done directly within the Spotify client. So within Marketplace, it's all about building the tools for creators to grow their audience, monetize their work, and continue their journey through from DIY all the way up to a superstar. Does that make
Awesome.
sense?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that was great. Yeah, thanks for sharing more on that.
sure.
So maybe if we just kind of dive into that a little bit more. So what are some of the kind of metrics that you optimize for on the creator side with some of the tools and services?
Um, So, I mean, like any business, it's going to start with gross margin as worrying, it's a business that needs to run, but there's also then pushes to understand just the health of the creator marketplace and understanding different dynamics from like those different members of the supply chain. So I probably can't get into too specifics of it, but if you can just think about like what a supply chain would look like, we're putting that into a framework too to also understand music content creation also.
Got it. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can kind of gloss over anything that we need to.
Yeah,
So
I've especially coming from Amazon, I'm very, very trained in the no comment. But yeah, it's I don't again and I'm not like I don't think there's a secret sauce on it. I think that there's going to be standard marketplace inventory metrics that you're going to use that are going to be applying to across the business for us, and then all these other marketplace founders would use also.
mhm. So you did mention the creator tools to focus on the actual kind of creation process,
Yeah.
and you did all mention distribution too. So kind of going beyond that, is there any other kind of like tools or services that you're also focused on building?
There are, and I'm not sure if we're able to share what they are yet. Those are the two, the promotion tools and then the analytics tools are the key ones for the music creators. If you go within the podcast side, you'll see that there are a lot of production level tools also. So both through purchasing of Anchor and then also distribution and monetizing tools there that are publicly available and I would say best in class. So that's part of Spotify's strategy is to expand not just from music creators, but also to podcast creators and be the number one audio platform for the whole world. So there's expansion on some of those tools within the podcast space that are public.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
And then I guess if we kind of jump over to the other side of the marketplace, so if we focus on or discuss the listeners for a little bit, could you maybe kind of break that down, that side of the marketplace for us a little bit?
Candidly, I'm not the best person to ask. So, as I said, I've been at Spotify for about 9 months, and I've been solely focused on the marketplace side. Part of being what's successful for tech economists is a lot of previous economist functions tried to do a lot of work across a lot of different business units. And my mental model and what I've learned from Amazon is to not spread yourself thin that way. So it's to stay solely focused on what the business unit problem has. So I can talk at a high level, but again, these are probably going to be stuff that you can find with a Google search. In general, the listeners and subscription revenue are one of the primary drivers for Spotify. There's also the ad revenue, so it is a dual monetization model that way. And then there's been rapid expansion of the subscribers worldwide that you can see.
Yeah, cool. And then I did want to chat about the podcast for a little bit.
Sure.
Is that something that you guys have seen an uptick with, recent with COVID?
Um, I don't know on that specifically. I know there's been changing in listening again, like I said, very focused on music. So I know there's been we've seen different listening patterns within music, um, as evidenced by people aren't commuting. So if
Yeah.
people aren't commuting, they're not going to be in their cars. I don't know the specifics for podcasts on how those behaviors have changed, but I know the behaviors have changed with music, and I think they'd be highly correlated with how just the behaviors have changed from working from home.
Cool. Cool. And then, so we're going to jump into questions here in a little bit because I do have some questions from people that on the chat. But as someone that's focused on marketplaces, internally there, is there any kind of like unique insights that you would want to share with us as like early stage kind of marketplace founders, given your experience and and kind of background that might be helpful for us?
Yeah, so this, I mean, I think this cuts across both Amazon and Spotify, but I mean, a key to every marketplace is a closed loop mechanism. So I don't know how familiar you are with Amazon's philosophy, but everything at Amazon needed to be one API driven, plus then also a mechanism. And so a mechanism could be for the individual process or it could be for the individual software. And a mechanism is defined by a closed loop system. So there has to be a starting point that you can insert yourself to, then you go fully around the circle, and then you come back with with the same. You come back to that same starting point, and hopefully you have a little bit more. So that's the idea. Like so, that mindset is really what's allowed Amazon to scale to where it's at, and what any marketplace founder really needs to be thinking about. Not just on like the things that you would think about, like inventory management or some of our pricing decisions, but even day to day how you're going to disseminate information. So Amazon's super well known for the 6-pager, and that's one of the strongest mechanisms that I've seen for a business decision to scale is to have these 6-page where documents, and maybe for your business it may be better to have 4-page or 3-page, but just some norm that decisions are going to be made in this way. And so that's the real strong point of the mechanism is it's an insertion point on we know that this decision needs to be made. Here we're going to put it into writing. It's not going to be PowerPoint. It's going to be into writing, and we're going to have a meeting. And the sole purpose of the meeting is to make that decision. So it makes a closed loop mechanism on business decision making that is very very scalable. Because once the decision's made, then you can share it. Then you can completely share it asynchronously versus that. So I think the takeaway is really have for any marketplace founder, everything has to be a mechanism because we know the dynamics of marketplaces are they need to scale and they're not going to scale with people. So whenever again every time you're thinking about how your processes are working or your software is being developed, start thinking that mechanistic framework is what is like one of the keys. It's not even secret sauce, it's like one of the key process and ways that Amazon has worked, and I've seen the same thing at Spotify. It's not scaling through people, it's scaling through mechanisms that you then fund and bring the people into the mechanisms. And then sometimes you're inserting the or the computer decision making into that mechanism, but it's always thinking that closed loop mechanism mindset has been a key.
I think that's a great point because we're all doing a lot of the manual in the early days. So
Yeah, exactly. So you got to start thinking about how that same thing can be done with lighter touch, with faster turnaround. So yeah, and again, just how does it make sure that it closes the loop? Also, is always some of the hardest parts because sometimes it's easy to make a decision, but then you can't close the loop and then either move on or continue to scale that same process.
yeah. Do you maybe have an example of that, of like that we could relate to as an earlier stage marketplace that could apply and just kind of thinking through that?
Um, sure. So on a process or a software basis?
Let's start with process because I think that's relatable for us.
Yeah, so process, very big culture on weekly business reviews or quarterly business reviews. Are you generally familiar with what I mean by that?
Hmm.
Yeah, so and with um, a huge focus on, as we talked about, what are the KPIs you're going to be putting in that, but then don't let that become the decision making space. So let a QBR be a place to gain insights and ask questions, But this is one thing that as a newer Amazon employee, I didn't realize until a while. But the QBRs are not necessarily where decisions are made. They're places to highlight frictions or highlight issues. But if you're going to make a decision, and when I say decision, I mean something that's going to materially impact the business. Like you can go from there and like, yeah, you could change. Well, I'm going to talk to this customer, but like the big decisions aren't made within that review process. They're made as a separate offshoot from that mechanism. So keeping a QPR in your business decision process is like one specific process thing that I've seen be very, very successful. And I've also seen, like I said, going back to failing, it's also where I've seen people fail. All right, well, why does this metric move this much? Okay, well then they're going to spend cycles on trying to explain on a movement of a metric versus trying to understand what the strategy or what the business decision should be to change that.
Got it. Cool. So let's see. Let's jump into some group questions here, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, sounds great.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, how's it going, Kyle?
Hey, Steve. Nice to meet you.
You too. Thanks for sitting down with us today. I really appreciate it. So you were talking about how one of your jobs is to be aware of how labels are evolving. Spotify being aware of that. So I think the future of almost like a label model could be like playlists in the future for Spotify. Whereas, just one of the functions for a label would be getting a bunch of ears on an artist, right? So I was curious about maybe how the relationship between independent playlist curators are for Spotify. So how does like the curator relationship with Spotify, how critical is that for Spotify's initiatives, would you say?
Well, so playlists are definitely one of the key functions that Spotify has and features that Spotify has done. And going back to what you said, I mean, yes, it's always been a label's job to get ears on the music. That's been true before Spotify, before radio, back to CD. So that core function is a need of the labels. And so I would just think of the playlist as one of the newer iterations of how that's being matching together the listeners and the artists. Where Spotify has, I think, done a great job is what was called algatorial, um, right?
Right.
So, and it goes back to what we are saying about a machine in the loop process. So they're going to have a machine who's going to spit out recommendations. All right, so those recommendations are going to be for this playlist, but then they have a lot of people who are really, really good at understanding what's popular right now or what could be popular in the future, aka editorials, adjusting those playlists. So then you feed back that playlist into the users, and then you see how that performs. So going back to that mechanism, there's that closed loop mechanism of putting a new process that serves the customer need through that agritorial playlist. I think that'll just continue. Um, there's going to be many different formats. There's going to be podcasts coming, and Spotify just announced that they're allowing tools where you can license podcasters can license music and within there. So I think it's just think about I think it's a great example that you highlight of what does the customer really need. They need audience, they need ears, and what's the best way that we can make a closed loop mechanism to provide that product.
Right.
Does that help
Yeah, I
answer?
like how Spotify. Yeah, I like how Spotify and Anchor have worked together because Spotify bought Anchor, right? And they
Mhm.
one of the coolest new functions is how Spotify you can input Spotify songs into a podcast and make it like a radio show, I believe. So, yeah, I think the future. I think Spotify is changing the game for sure, and
Yeah.
really exciting stuff. So, yeah, cool.
Appreciate that. And I mean, I can talk even a little bit more just to expand. Like the beauty of it is is the combination human and machine decision making process, right? So like we know if we just do recommended playlists that use certain technologies, a lot of times those can get stale, or you're going to get yourself into listening to the same music. So the beauty is putting that human interaction together to produce a product that is unique and even more valuable.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, I did have a question for you, and that was, maybe I guess the point where it's, the human kind of input versus machine making decisions. Is there an example that you can share of, in the early stages, like at what point you kind of shift?
So there's going to be like three decision points on that. One would have to be scalability. So one is, so that's the first measure you would make. The next would be, let me put this in non-economic terms. How much do you need to disturb from the average? So whatever, what I mean by that is any machine algorithm or decision-making process is going to come away with generally averages. So as we were talking about with playlists, that's good that it could, like, the foundational work could tell you what the average listener wants to listen to. But you know that music listening is very, very diverse. And so if you just keep giving the average song to everybody, you might not be satisfying anyone. So you need to put in, so that's where playlists started, right? As, generally without the human, just as human interaction, but that wasn't scalable. So that's the trade-off there, is the scalability versus needing to not surface what would be an average. And then the third take is, the priorities of the business. So how big of an issue, or how big of a potential opportunity is this for the business? So it's that first two is the trade-off between, humans and being afraid you might not satisfy any customers, and then the last is, how much prioritization does this have for the KPI for the business? For playlists, obviously that's a huge part. Growing audiences and having listeners be satisfied is one huge KPI for the business. So that's where you need to make sure that you have that combination in there and the resources dedicated to it.
Cool. Thanks for sharing more. I know that's a little bit nuanced. So
yeah, and I try not to get into like extreme value distributions and things like that, but just I always just think about machine learning models and econometric models are great at averages, but sometimes your business case is not. You're not going to satisfy your customer by giving them the average.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Cool. So, hey, Kai, did you want to come on?
Yeah. So I guess first of all, thanks so much for doing this. This has been really good. I think when looking at sort of marketplace dynamics, like one of the interesting things that I've noticed that separates marketplaces is like willingness to transact almost, right?
Yeah.
Where on Amazon, the willingness to transact on both parties, if they do agree to is always going to be high, right? Whereas if you look at like a professional services or maybe a labor marketplace, that willingness might be lower for one party or another, right? In the sense that, like, let's say I'm a job site and I show a candidate a bunch of jobs from Google AI's team, and that candidate has 0 years of experience, right? So that willingness is different. I know you haven't exactly operated in those ones that are a bit more selective, but how do you think that changes the sort of supply chain of the marketplace that you're talking about, and how can you best balance those needs as well?
Oh, great question. And yeah, I don't think I have as much experience with this, so I'll give an educated guess. How about that? And I did just listen to a podcast, and maybe I'll plug, called Invest like the Best. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but I think it's been super helpful. And they were just talking about Carvana, which it might be the better analogy here, where Carvana is a used car marketplace. And obviously used car sales are going to be super low frequency. If you get 3 or 4, you're going to, from one customer, that's a huge win. I think the takeaway is to determine what does the customer need that could be more higher frequency, is my takeaway from what I heard about Carvana and how I would think about it. So yes, you're going to have these individual transactions, or another analogy would be like Zillow, right? Zillow, you're purchasing a house, what, I don't even know what the average is. Once every 7 years is average for somebody who does buy a house. But they were able to increase the frequency of interaction through Zillow or through the Z estimate. People definitely want to know how much the price is worth. They want to know that often. So they were able to increase the frequency of the transaction usage of the marketplace by not just providing the service of the actual transaction, but then the supplementary services that go along with it that grow that branding and grow that customer acquisition. So that whenever you're ready to purchase, you might take that Zillow offer immediately because you're very familiar with it. What do you think? I'd love to hear like a discussion from somebody who's in it. Does that sound right, or is it missing some nuance?
No, I mean, I think it sounds pretty right. I think also what we sort of start to see, like, so for example, like I'm in like the job space. I'm like a kind of job finding, like what I've sort of noticed proliferate is essentially like noise reduction agents almost. If that frequency of transaction is low and it is sort of curated, it's what I like to call like noise reduction agents, right? And so this could either be like a manual recruiter who actually goes out and engages with candidates on behalf of the company and kind of says that they could like, bump them up in the process, or something that's a kind of more curated space of people in general, right? So for example, something would be like a private community of game developers that are pre-vetted to join that community. And so I guess like, yeah, I think especially when the frequency is low, if the amount of options that you have to deal with is high, it kind of creates a bad experience, right? For example, on Spotify, you can deal with a lot of options because there's probably going to be a high amount of songs that you actually do end up listening to. Whereas with like making a hire, for example, you don't want to deal with a lot of options because you're only going to make one hire. And so either that sort of increasing frequency of like supplementary activities, that makes a lot of sense, but also probably third-party agents that reduce the noise and reduce the friction.
Yeah, that would make sense. And I think like with the Z-estimate like analogy, that's exactly what Z-estimate does. It reduces the noise of what is this worth, so that I can use that as one of my key decision points, because that will be a key driver for if people make the transaction.
Exactly. It takes down like the potential options from 100 to whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
That's a great question. Cool. Let's see. Hey, Tomas, did you want to jump on?
Yep. Yeah, sure thing. Hey, Kyle, thanks for taking the time to connect with us. Definitely a super, super helpful conversation.
Sure.
By way of very brief intro, I'm starting an early stage marketplace that aggregates unused resources to connect people to the natural world more easily. So we're building a shared quiver of used surfboards in private lockers, right by the beach. So kind of like if you were to take the like Amazon locker model, put them by the beach, put surfboards in it, that's what we're doing. And the super, I think one of one of the main theses that I was really hearing you talk about was the importance of those closed loop systems for decision making. And I wanted to see if you had any recommendations for specific like readings or content or books or any resources that could be really helpful in providing more detail and tactics on some particularly high value and relevant systems for early stage marketplaces that we could run with and adopt.
Yeah, sure. One that comes to mind is it's actually called what is it? Platform Revolution. I actually have it right here. I can share this. So we know platforms are like a step towards a marketplace. So people, I think, sometimes forget that you need to build a platform before you have a marketplace. So you have to have two sides of it. So this is these guys run a seminar every summer at MIT that has really just helped me understand all of these issues. So yeah, it's Platform Revolution by Parker, Van Alstyne, and Chowdhury. Highly, highly recommend it. Then specifically within marketplace economics, I don't know if I have a great book per se, but I know what I've learned the best from is, again, I've talked about the podcast, like Invest Like the Best was one. A lot of them are technical economic works, so I don't think that would actually be a good recommendation. Let me think about it as a takeaway for how to move from like a platform to a marketplace, and see if I can come up with a good one for y'all.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah, for sure. And again, as you can see, my viewpoint is going to be skewed towards a little bit towards the academic versus the business side. So just take that as a grain of salt. But I think this book just helped like revolutionize how I thought about the interactions. So I think it's useful for everyone.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. That was a great question, because Miriam also posted that in the general chat. So we'll come back to that. Hey, Levi. So I called you on you a little bit too early, but you ready to come on?
All good. Good morning, everyone. Kyle, thanks for carving out time. One of the questions I had was actually on this notion of creator monetization. It's an area of focus that I love. And I'd love, for you to talk about the long tail and how sort of Spotify deals with, trying to get creators to continuously come back, especially when looking at the long tail. So I'd be curious to get your thoughts there.
So I think it's amazing what Spotify has enabled with the long tail, and that's similar to all these other marketplaces that will enable this long tail of low level of transactions for a vast number of creators. Um, Spotify, specifically on how it gets it come back, is by, I would say, providing the tools to be found, to grow your audience, to provide that outlet to where if you make a great song and you make something that the audience wants to listen to, that has the ability to scale very quickly. So it's this dual path of, we know that the cost of distribution is decreasing, the cost of making music is decreasing. Um, Spotify provides tools like SoundBetter and Soundtrap that allow you to make professional quality music with never meeting another person. So I think it's this dual understanding that there's going to be continued proliferation, along with then just giving everybody the chance to have their music found and discovered. And so that's like, going to back like a closed loop situation. So all right, so Spotify's marketplace has the tools where you can transact to make the music. They have the distribution mechanism, and then they have the feedback loop through S4X on how did this perform. And so an individual artist can make their own feedback mechanism. Like, they can put a song out there and see directly how it does. And other places will provide that too. Like SoundCloud obviously will provide some SoundCloud analytics and things like that. But Spotify, I think, is a little bit more unique in that they're providing creator tools through both the marketplace within SoundBetter and Soundtrap.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
To layer on top of that, when you sort of look at kind of the evolutions of platforms, especially, again, focusing on the long tail, and without sort of, tipping your hand too much, happy to stay within bounds. Yeah. Are there things that, Spotify is particularly looking at on helping these creators continue to sort of build monetization? So albeit like, like private streaming events, or this notion of linear commerce, right? Which is the ability of like, hey, now that the person has been discovered and they like this, this musicians or this artist sort of music, is their abilities to then, sort of turn this individual to like a multi-SKU creator, right? Where they're able to monetize in different facets or in different forms. So we'd be curious to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes back to what's public, and that being able to license your music right within a podcast. So remember, music takes all sorts of all sorts of varieties. It's not just pop music. It's not just different genres. There's also intro music. There's also music, professional musicians who make things that are designed directly for TV shows. So by providing this into different formats, we'll provide just a different variety of monetization that nobody would have been able to beforehand. Before podcasts, like, there was no way to actually legally monetize, like, to link together who was going to get paid from that. So Spotify's goal is to be the #1 audio platform. So yeah, I would expect to see more different formats and continued innovation to help creators and again, creators on all parts of the music journey.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah,
that's a good question, Levi. Hey, so Kyle, I did have a question. If you could maybe share more on Soundtrap and SoundBetter for us that aren't familiar with it.
Sure. So both are acquisitions that Spotify's made that basically are going to allow for professional quality music to be made. So just to make sure I don't get it wrong, Soundtrap is the tool that is going to allow the music to be made in a collaborative fashion. So it is a digital tool that you can start thinking about like Google Docs. So instead of a file format of being .doc, it would be a music file that then you can share and collaborate there. SoundBetter is then the marketplace where individual creators can find other creators and put together to make professional quality music. So say somebody has produced the vocals, but they want to find somebody who can do the mixing for them. They can go on SoundBetter and find the providers. And so it's one of the more pure marketplaces within Spotify right now.
Got it. And then if feel free to kind of skim over this. But how does Spotify, with just the reach you guys obviously have, how do you think about kind of build versus buy when it comes to potential tools and platforms?
I've only been, so I'll go again. I've been here 9 months, and I don't have a lot of insight into that right now. So yeah, I don't think I can comment on that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see if we had any kind of more questions here from the group. Hey, Pablo, did you want to come on? Good. Cool. We'll kind of wait and see if he comes back on that. Well, cool. So I did want to ask just kind of a little bit kind of random question, but what's maybe something that one of the most kind of exciting things that you've learned or kind of seen like internally since you've joined the Spotify team?
Culture matters. So I went from working at a place that was founded in the U.S., founded in the tech culture within there, to a place that is founded in Sweden, that is still headquartered primarily out of Sweden, with a major outpost here in New York. And culture just can completely change the decision making process and completely change how people work. So I had that idea that it was going to happen, but just being here within 9 months, like just really has codified how it's just a different operating model. And so as a founder, that's that's going to be one of that's going to be one of the biggest levers that you have is the culture. And so what I've loved to see and been able to probably comment on is that both still have very strong founder cultures. Jeff Bezos has been quoted as saying his job is to ensure that the Spotify culture continues, because that's his key to success. And so that was done, codified through leadership principles that are not just words on the wall. They are how people are evaluated. They are how people make decision-making processes. It's how the leadership principles and the culture lead to that organizational structure and how people behave. So versus Spotify, they're lighter on the leadership principles, but more on a collaborative environment. So one of Spotify's leadership principles that I love is playfulness. And so I was just talking about this with one of my new hires, who was an economist who previously worked in litigation consulting, and he goes, "Yeah, I wasn't sure if 7 or 8 gifts was too many in my presentation, but it seemed like that was the right amount." And I go, "Yeah, how many have you done before?" And he goes, "0." Like, I never put a GIF in a presentation, but it's so important to understand the culture, and as founders to set that culture that you want, because that's what people are going to do. And so, like, I love Spotify's culture of playfulness. It's allowed me to express myself more. It's allowed me to be closer to like that side of the tapping into the creative side of myself, versus Amazon's culture that is much more operations oriented, and speed of decision making matters. And versus Spotify's is going to be more collaborative, and there's just the idea that, have some fun with the presentations, but have fun with the work and bring people along in the journey, versus go run do on this individual task and then report out when you're done. So yeah, culture has been the biggest change. Because both generally are tech companies, so they have similar fundamentals on how they want to operate a business model, but it's very, very different cultures that lead to different operating procedures.
Certainly sounds like a great culture there for sure. So,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah,
that's a really great point for us all too, as earlier stage founders. It starts early with that to kind of set the culture.
exactly. And so that's part of my job too, is to set what type of tech economist culture we want at Spotify. And so I've done things that I've taken from Amazon, but changed it a little bit, and I think I matched it to Spotify better. And so we'll see over the next couple of years as we continue to expand tech economists here at Spotify.
Yeah, we'll have to do a follow up on that and see if you're still using them in a presentation, 7 or 8 in each presentation. Maybe that'll grow.
Yeah, for sure.
So, cool. So we have I think Steve wants to come back on with a question, if that's cool, with one more.
Yeah. Just one more, specifically about podcast advertising. So I was listening to somebody talk about this earlier this week. They were talking about how now, since we paid $10 a month for Spotify, right? And so the Apple Podcast app is free. So one way to monetize again would be advertisements on podcasts. Has there been any pushback from listeners who pay $10 a month to maybe like Joe Rogan podcast still has like 30 to 40 minutes worth of ads, I guess, people were talking about. So has there been any pushback from listeners on the podcast side where they don't want to pay $10 a month and also get served ads? Has there been any friction there? I'm just curious to see if there's been any of that type of conversations.
I don't know specifically on the podcast side. Maybe what'll help is, I know that it's been a huge feature for Spotify to be able to offer ads, and that have the ads level that is free, and then the subscription model. So it is a dual subscription model that on the music side. So I don't know specifically though with the introduction of the podcast here, but the free tier service that has ads on music and the subscription model is, that's going to be the biggest lead gen for the subscribers. And so I don't want to speculate on that, but I know the hybrid model has worked so far for Spotify very, very well.
Yeah, I think so. And plus, we get both music and podcasts. I don't think it's too much of an issue I had to know if there was like an issue. People were talking about it over at Spotify or anything, but yeah, cool.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Well, I think that's it for the questions over here. So we really appreciate it, Kyle. This is a really great chat. This is the first time we've ever had an economist on too. So
okay, yeah, I really appreciate it. Any feedback you guys have, feel free to ping me a note. Again, I tried to stay away from some of the econ jargon, but if there's something that was unclear, please let me know. And I owe you guys a follow up on best marketplace econ reading.
Yeah, I was going to say that'd be great if you can just kind of shoot that back over or something in the Slack group. So I know quite a few are interested to kind of dive into it more and get up to speed on there. And so
can do.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much again for the time. This is really great to chat with you, and thanks everyone for joining in today.
Yeah, appreciate you guys letting me be part of your group. I'm super excited to see what you guys are producing.
Awesome. Thanks everyone.